All right. So, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to our faculty development workshops that we started this semester. Today, we have two presenters here with us, Dr. Anshu Arora and Dr. Brown. And they will be presenting about social, collaborative, and ethical robotics. And just an FYI, 2 weeks from now on 29th, it's a Thursday, same time, 2 o'clock, we'll have another presentation by Dr. Naza Ghali, and that's going to be on social entrepreneurship. So I'll give you more details as we get closer to the date. I'll send you all a reminder and a calendar invite. But that's all from now. From my side, I'll just hand it over to Dr. Anshu and Dr. Brown Gaston. Over to you.
So I'm going to start by saying hello, and it's such a pleasure to see all of you. But before we begin, I just want to take a moment and to wish my partner in crime a very happy birthday. Happy birthday, Dr. Aurora. I wish you all that your heart desires. And I would sing for you, but I don't want anyone to hang up, right?
Happy birthday.
Thank you. Sending you much love, much love. But if we could all take a moment and wish her a happy birthday, that would be fabulous. So at the sound of my voice after 3, okay? Do all your unmute. 1, 2, 3. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday. Yay.
Thank you.
And the others of you who did not unmute your phone, that was very naughty. Okay, so we are going to begin with our presentation. Dr. Aura and I, we spent some time divulging into the ethical aspect of robots, and I am by no means an expert, and so we would just like to take this moment and share with you the information with which we have gathered. And she is going to begin with the social robotics aspect of it. Do you want me? Oh, she's going to share.
I'm going to share my screen right now.
Yes.
Yeah, there it is. Yes.
Yes, there it is.
But of course, Raquel, thank you so much. I'm speechless at the moment, so I don't know what to present. This is so unexpected.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So as Raquel said, we're talking about the social, military, robotics, and ethics. In fact, I'm talking about the social robotics, and of course, Raquel will talk about the ethics in military robotics. So let's get started. Hopefully, I'll have words to talk about right now because I'm suddenly overwhelmed. But thank you all. Thank you for your wishes. So the topic that I'm going to present here is something called finding H in HRI, or basically finding human in human-robot interaction, examining human personality traits, robotic anthropomorphism, and robot-like ability in HRI, or human-robot interaction. So it's purely based on social behavioral robotics as we know it. The professors who were involved in this research were myself, then Dr. Amit Arora, and Dr. Jiajin Zhu from the School of Engineering and Applied Sciences. And then we have Dr. Val Starris from the University of North Carolina. And the undergraduate student who was a part of this effort was Miss Mayumi Fleming. The good news is that we have a paper. We just recently, got this acceptance for our paper. So the paper will now be published in December 2020 in the International Journal of Intelligent Information Technologies. So we're very happy. And of course, Mayumi Fleming is a co-author on this paper. Of course, we also work with UDC Mechatronics and Robotics Lab, and the research has been supported by the National Science Foundation as well as the National Aeronautics and Space Administration. So we have 2 grants that supported this research effort. So this is just the outline of the presentation. And I wanted to just give you sort of a brief, motivation for the research. And I thought instead of playing this video, I'll have my voiceover and then I'll play the video for you. And maybe then it makes more sense, right? So I'll try to ensure that explains basically what is artificial intelligence. So we'll talk about that right now. And again, it's used as a motivation. So the big question, as we all know it, is what is AI, or the artificial intelligence? And again, yet another question is, what is the most complex system in the world? And really the answer lies in your head, most literally, because it's the human brain. So obviously the human brain is the most complex and the most powerful system in the world. And even the most complex networks cannot beat the human intelligence or the human brain as we know it. But the ultimate aim of artificial intelligence is actually to change that, is actually to make sure that you beat and it's not really creating a computer or a human, but it's actually creating the mimicking of the AI or the human intelligence, and there are many steps along the way. And of course, the smaller AIs, you can see it in a series of Facebook friend recommendations. We can see it in our homes and the cars that we drive. AI is everywhere as we know it. And then the most powerful example of AI, and that was in 1997 for the first time, Deep Blue, the computer. It actually had beaten the Gary Kasparov chess champion at the time. And that's what we're talking 1997, not even any recent thing. But that was a very small example of a smaller or a narrower AI. But if you now make the Deep Blue, play something else like a game of checkers, it's not going to do anything. I mean, there's no way it can actually excel in that particular field. So that's more like an example of how AI is actually everywhere that we speak. But the real big thing is to create a superhuman that can really think for yourself. I mean, adapt, learn by the environment, and really to have that superhuman in place. We're not talking about recent times. We're talking about the year 2050. So obviously, right now, it's so much of a little progress is happening in this field. But 2050 is a year when they all are talking about creating that superhuman who will walk with the other humans. And again, they can save humanity or destroy humanity. But whatever is going to happen, artificial intelligence is going to change the world forever. So that's like a brief introduction that I just want to give you all. And let's see. All right, so that was like a low tech, low fidelity introduction, like a level 101 that I just gave you. But really, artificial intelligence has been there for decades, and it has been there. It was actually invented as a term in Dartmouth College by McCarthy, and I'm trying to, yeah, there is. Dr. John McCarthy, he coined the term of artificial intelligence, and he defined it as a science and engineering of making intelligent machines. And then, of course, artificial intelligence is like having something like computational power, access to algorithms, libraries. It started growing into Amit, can you mute if it's possible? All right. Thank you so much. Thank you. All right. So I know Amit has the capability of muting everyone, so that's the reason I requested him to mute. So as I was talking about, artificial intelligence here is all about the computational power, access to algorithms, libraries, data, has been growing. And in fact, since 2015 till recent, the venture capital has invested about $60 billion in AI startups. Again, just to explain the difference between artificial intelligence, machine learning, and deep learning, because these are the key terms that we hear all the time. So AI is just like a big umbrella of things, of which machine learning is a subset, and deep learning is a subset of machine learning. So if I have to explain you in the real layman language, then I say artificial intelligence is like saying that this computer is doing a human thing. So obviously, it's acting like a human, is behaving like a human, is doing something that we as humans think or do. But if I say machine learning, then basically that means that the computer is learning. So on the basis of all the past data and all the patterns that the computer has been given, right now the computer has the ability to learn and adapt to the data. And then we have deep learning, which basically means that this computer is learning in a specific way. So if you understand this AI, ML, and DL, that is artificial intelligence, machine learning, and deep learning, so these are the key differences. Again, this was again a very low tech introduction to AI, but I just want to make sure that we all are comfortable with AI. Now let's move on to social robotics, the robots that we see everywhere in our social lives. Has anyone seen this robot or know about this robot? This was a very popular robot in 2015. So any idea what it is? Anyone? Have you seen this? Well, this robot is called Hitchbot. So it's like hitchhike. So, this was a robot that came popular in 2015. And the reason it became that popular was because the robot was actually purely dependent on the kindness of human beings or the strangers. And what it used to hitchhikes basically. So it used to a request for hiking in your car, and the human beings or the strangers or people were putting the robot in their cars and taking it to their places, to different places. And believe it or not, this robot actually crossed borders. So this actually went to Europe, then went to Canada. But as soon as it entered America, it was vandalized beyond repair. So that was sort of a history of this. But the key thing here is, of course, we know that the humans, we have all kinds of people. But the best part is that the robot sustained that long. I think it sustained 6 months of travel all over the world. And that was something that was amazing about HitchBot. Now, before I tell you more about HitchBot, let me tell you a brief sort of, again, an introduction to the robots now. So now this is a very popular robot of 1990. So this came in 1990s, a Shimo, that's a Japanese robot. It's not called a Simo, it's called a Shimo. And I think the full acronym stands for Advanced Step in Innovative Mobility. This was the first robot to walk, talk, and to do, voice recognition, facial recognition, so all the great things that we found here. And this was actually developed by Honda that you can see here. The next robot that came into being was by Sony, and this is Curio, the Quest for Curiosity. This is in 2000s. And this was the first robot to do Ramba Samba, dancing. And, think about a robot, not just walking, but dancing. So even as humans, when we dance, we sort of tend to lose our balance. And look at the robot, a machine dancing in front of us. So that was a big deal or a big step in that particular time. And I'm talking 2000s. And this is a very recent robot. This is 2016. In fact, this robot has gained a lot of popularity in 2019, especially in the COVID-19 period. This is from a Toyota company. It's called Toyota Kiribo Mini. This robot is actually a part of their Heart project or the PET project. So this is basically where what they're doing is in Japan, since we have a lot of seniors, it's an aging population in Japan. So people love this robot, which has this big eyes, and they use it as their pets. And this robot actually gauges and understands your emotions. It's basically, let's say, if you're not having a good day, it'll talk back to you and say, "Hey, how can I make your day better?" If you put this robot in your car and then you're driving, and you suddenly break your car, or apply brakes on your car, then suddenly the robot is going to scream back at you and say, "Hey, what are you doing? How are you driving? Pay attention." So those kind of lovely things this robot is capable of doing. So it gauges and understands human emotions. It's a very, very intelligent or artificially intelligent robot as of today. So this was again a quick introduction about robotics. So coming back to HitchBot that I was telling you, 2015, as I said, this robot really was purely dependent on the humans, the people taking them from one place to the other. And of course, at one point in time, it was completely vandalized. Now, the time when it was vandalized, there was an outpour of emotions on the internet, on social media. So especially, Twitter, again, people started talking about the robot as if it was a real person. And what they were saying is HitchBot is dead because humans are awful. Cecil the lion and HitchBot the robot in the same week. So obviously they're comparing it with a living thing. And then I'm so sorry, some awful person in my city did this to you. Please know that not everyone in Philly is this terrible. So again, a lot of emotions about HitchBot the robot. Now, the question that I was thinking from the research perspective of my research for this research motivation was, why are these, the informed adults who know that this robot is a non-living thing, it's not a living person, right? So why are these informed adults who know that HitchBot is just a robot and who just doesn't understand emotions, why are they sympathizing with the robot directly? So this is a big question because obviously we're not talking about a living person or a living thing, but we're talking about the robot, which is a machine, but still people are sympathizing directly with the robot. And the answer lies in something that's called anthropomorphism. So again, I know a lot of my students work on this. I'm sure if they have come to your classes, they will talk about anthropomorphism. Well, anthropomorphism is just like, you're adding human characteristics to the non-human things. So it could be a cat of yours or a dog of yours, but you're making it more humanly. So you're making things, the non-living or the living things, more humanly. So more human-like features or characteristics. And that's the reason when we talk about robots in our social spheres, we try to give them big eyes or nose or the facial features and the capability to talk, listen, And this is all anthropomorphizing the robots. And again, the key behind anthropomorphism is that we respond to social cues from lifelike machines, even if we know they're not real. So that's a big deal. The other concept that we started as a part of our research is the big five human personality traits. I'm sure the management people who are here, they know about the big five. This was given by Goldberg in 1981. It's a sort of a measurement of a human personality, and it has basically five characteristics. So we talk about extroversion, agreeableness, conscientiousness, neuroticism, and openness to experience. So here, of course, the weight is okay. So extroversion is basically the people who are extroverts are more energetic, more social, more enthusiastic, they're emotionally positive. People who are agreeable tend to be more affectionate, more altruistic, more modest and sympathetic. So these are all positive traits in humans. And of course, we have conscientious people who are basically more organized. They're responsible, they're reliable, they're goal oriented, and they have a controlled personality style in terms of knowing exactly what's right and what's not. So these are the conscientious people that we're talking about. And the neurotic people, on the other hand, are actually tense. They're more fearful of the world around them. They're emotionally negative and sad. So this is a negative trait, a human personality trait that we're talking about. And then, of course, we have openness to experience. These are the open-minded people who are more insightful, more curious, again, a positive trait. And basically, they're open to experiencing new things or meeting new people or interacting with new cultures. So these are the five different characteristics that we used in our research as well. We used the 44-item scale by John and Srivastav that actually measures extroversion, conscientiousness, neuroticism, agreeableness, and openness to experience. So going further, obviously we use these big five personality traits. We use robotic anthropomorphism, robot likability in our research that we were doing on social robotics. The three research questions that we were addressing were, do the big five personality traits impact robot likability in HRI or the human robot interaction? Will the degree of human-like attributes, which is also called the human or the robotic anthropomorphism, influence the likability of robots? And will robotic anthropomorphism influence the relationship between human personality variables and robot likability in the varying HRI situations? So these were the big things, the three big questions. The theory that we were using behind this is called the uncanny valley effect. Now, this is a very, very popular theory in social robotics. And this is, again, the way as humans, when we look at robots and how do we look at them. So if we're looking at an industrial robot, which is basically in the industry, which is basically working on the shop floor or the assembly floor of the companies, and mostly doing the assembly operations. Let's say in a big car companies, you have industrial robots who are trying to put the pieces together. Vis-a-vis a humanoid robot, which is a social robot who might be useful for seniors, for their assistants, even for autism, for kids, and even interacting like with people, like normal people, like all of us. So there is this sort of a curve that we follow when we sort of, like the robot or not like the robot. So obviously, if you see here, the industrial robots is actually on the negative side or the lower side of the human spectrum. But as we go up, then we have the humanoid robot, and then there's this uncanny valley dip that happens. And then, of course, we're talking about the healthy person as it goes up. So this is our likability towards robotics or social robotics as we keep it. So this was a theory that we used. And this is a conceptual framework along with the hypotheses. So in the framework, as you can see here, we're using the big five human personality variables, which is extroversion, agreeableness, conscientiousness, neuroticism, and of course, openness to experience, and how they impact robot anthropomorphism or robotic anthropomorphism, and how that acts as a mediator between the big five and the robot likability, and of course, how does and that really impacts a successful HRI implementation. So we have these direct hypotheses which are here. And then we also looked at the relationship of big five directly with the robot likability, which is not guided through the robotic anthropomorphism. So if you see this H1B, H2B, H3B, 4B, and 5B, these are the hypotheses which are directly linked from the big five to the robot likability and not going through the mediator of robotic anthropomorphism. So we're trying to, study all the mediating relationships and the non-mediating relationships and the direct relationships in our model. In terms of methodology, we used well, we use the X Culture project. So I know I always talk about X Culture in the meetings. So this was a project that we used from the University of North Carolina. Again, I won't go into the details of X Culture, but we have like 10,000 students who participate in X Culture every semester. And these are the students who come from all parts of the world. We're talking 112 countries, and I think more than 100 plus universities, and we're covering 6 continents. So we had the huge sample that we were looking at for measuring and for talking about these attributes that we have in our model. Um, Going further, so what we did here as a part of the thing is we were looking at 2 kinds of robots. So we looked at industrial robots and then we looked at social robots. So for the industrial robots, we had something called KUKA, and if I have to show you, this is an example. If you see this robot here, this is an industrial robot. It's called KUKA, and this is by the company KUKA Electronics. What this robot does is, again, it works behind the scenes. It's mostly on the industry, like in the companies or the organizations, more so for automation, for digitization, and all that. But recently, what KUKA Robotics have done is that they're trying to get this robot, which is not without, it doesn't have eyes, right? So if you look at this robot, there are no eyes, no features, nothing. It's purely industrial robot. But now the company is trying to get this robot in the social sphere of things, so making it more social, whatever the way they can, but without giving them any eyes or features of humans. So here in this example, you can see the robot playing ping pong with Timo Boll, who's the #1 player. And of course, and it's actually a full-fledged video. So if you actually go to YouTube, you can see the video yourself. But here, the first set, the robot wins, but the next 2 sets are won by the ping pong player, the world ping pong player. So more in the social sphere of things. So that's what the company is trying to do. But again, KUKA is actually an industrial robot. And the other robot that we used here, which was a social robot, is actually called Paro, which is personal assistant robot. And it's a seal robot. So here, if you can see here, it's a seal robot. It's very, very helpful for elderly care, for senior care in the senior living. And again, the reason it's so useful is people, especially who are who like cannot have animals for their care because they might not be comfortable with them, can use Paro, the seal robot, and they can cuddle the robot. So the robot makes different kinds of sounds and noises, especially very cute noises. So as you cuddle the robot, it has those big eyelashes, it closes its eyes, and it sort of enjoys it. So again, giving you the feeling as if the robot is a real living thing when it's not. So again, it's a social robot that people have been using. And we also use the Godspeed questionnaires, which are actually very popular questionnaires in the field of robotics for measuring robotic anthropomorphism, robot likability, and HRI implementation. And we use the big 5 personality traits by John and Srivastav. It's called Mini IPIP. That's the instrument that we use for 44 item scale for measuring human personality traits. So those were the methodology that we have. Coming to the results and findings, we got some really interesting results that I'd like to discuss with you guys. So the first thing was we found that in both the cases, whether it was industrial robot situations or it was social robotic situations, we found very strong relationships between robotic anthropomorphism, robot likability, and HRI implementation. So if I go back here to the figure, to the conceptual model, so what you see on the right side of this model, the robot anthropomorphism leading to robot likability and successful HRI implementation, they were very, very significant and very important in either or in both the situations, so in both the industrial robotic as well as the social robotic situation. Going further, so during the interactions with KUKA robots, which is basically industrial robots, we found that extroversion resulted in positive anthropomorphism and then leads to robot likability. So sort of saying that in the industrial robotics, the extroversion, the personality trait, was actually related to robot likability, but not directly, but there was a mediator involved. And so robotic anthropomorphism acted as that mediator between extroversion and robot likability for industrial robotic situations. For KUKA robots, again, agreeableness resulted in positive robot likability, while neuroticism resulted in negative robot likability. Conscientiousness and openness did not have any significant relationship. So again, the point we're trying to make here is that for the industrial robots, only extraversion was related through anthropomorphism and then leading to likability, while the other two traits, which is agreeableness and neuroticism, was leading directly to robot likability or dislikability without having anthropomorphism as a mediator. And then for the social robotics, we found that both extraversion and agreeableness resulted in positive anthropomorphism for para robots, which is a social robots, and then it resulted in positive robot likability. So, unlike industrial settings, the direct relationships between personality traits and robot likability were missing in the social HRI situations. So, again, just to simplify this so that's understandable by everyone, the point we're trying to say here is that in the industrial robots, these big five personality traits were related to the robot likability directly without robot anthropomorphism playing a mediating role, except for extraversion. So people who are extroverts, they will always use the robotic anthropomorphism first, and then they will either like or dislike the robot. In case of the social robotics, we found that the direct relationships between the extroversion, agreeableness, or conscientiousness, they were not there with the robot likability. There was always the mediator of robotic anthropomorphism that was involved for social robotics. So again, what we're trying to say here is when people try to bring robots in their social lives, they firstly anthropomorphize those robots. They firstly tend to develop those likeness, those feelings, those emotions and those responses with the robots first, and then they sort of like or dislike the robot. So there's not a direct relationship when you have a robot at your home. Whereas if it's an industrial robot, the anthropomorphism, the indicator is not that important because people sort of either like it or dislike it on completely on their own basis. But anthropomorphism has no results to play in industrial robotics. And again, just to exemplify this more, that extroverts, people who are extroverts are, it doesn't matter whether they're looking at an industrial robot or they're looking at social robot, they will always firstly anthropomorphize and then they will like or dislike a robot. So that was just a little difference that we got for extroversion people or the people with extroversion trait. But otherwise, more or less across the spectrum, we found that for industrial robots, people like or dislike them without the need of anthropomorphism. But for social robots, there's always firstly anthropomorphism and then they like or dislike the robot. So these were some big results that we got, which has a lot of managerial implications, especially from a designing perspective. So obviously, if you're looking at people who are designing robots, then they need to be very careful about the social and the behavioral side of robotics. And so, of course, the roboticists, the robotic designers, the robot companies of the world, they need to really pay very close attention to social and behavioral robots. I think this was my last slide here, so I'm going to now pass it on to Dr. Raquel Brown Gaston for taking it further with ethics and human-robot interaction. Raquel, you're here?
I am here. Is there any way for me to manage your PowerPoint slides from here, or should I just
That's fine. You can just keep telling me, and I'll keep on going on to the next slide. Will that help?
Okay. Yeah, so you can go on to the next one. Okay. All right. Okay. Okay. So here we focus on the role of ethics in military robots, and the reason why this is so important is because the Department of Defense, with its $700 billion budget, estimated that by 2025 we are going to have more killer robots than humans, on the battlefield. Now there are two advantageous things to this. One is that we will have less human casualty, and the other is said that the robots are faster and stronger, and they won't die. Okay, you can go on to the next slide. Okay, now this poses a slight problem because it is in direct conflict with the laws of robotics. The first one talks about the fact that as a robot, you're not supposed to harm a human, and you're not supposed to do anything in action that would allow a human to be harmed. The second law is that the robot is supposed to be able to take an order. However, if that order is in conflict with the first law, which is to hurt human, the robot is not to follow that order. The third one is that robots are supposed to act in self-preservation unless it is in direct conflict with the first law and the second law. So you can see now that the way in which we are heading as a country is already going up against the laws of robotics. You can go on to the next slide. Okay. So the Department of Defense focus on 3 types of robots. The first one is social, which I'm going to talk about in the next slide. The first one is called autonomous weapon system, which work directly with humans interacting with the robots. And the third one is the lethal autonomous weapon system, where these robots are now going without any human interaction. They're making decisions. You can go on to the next slide. Okay, so the first one is the social robots. As you can see, the social robots are used in many forms. They can use to carry you from battlefield. They can use to scour to see what is happening around enemy lines. They can go inside the building to see if it's clear. If it's COVID-19, they can disinfect the place. They can serve as patrolmen. They can even serve as target practice. So you see this robot on the wheels. This is at a range where they're shooting, and it's so much as if they're humans, because when one robot is shot, then you have the other robots who are trying to take cover. These are just some examples of how the Department of Defense is using social robots in the military. You can continue on to the next slide. And they continue. This is just different shape and sizes, but they pretty much serve the same purpose. Well, except for here, here they can use as patrolling the region. Okay, you can go on to the next slide. Then we are going to move on to the autonomous robots. Now, typically with the autonomous robots, they have to be directed by humans. Now, the reason why I have why we have these pictures is because these are supposed to be secret missions, except the only person in the world know about them is us and the Department of Defense, which is why it's secret. Okay, so the first one you see here, this is with the Marine Sea Corps, and I mean the Marine Corps, and it's called Sea Mob Program. And what they have are these inflatable boats, and they communicate with each other. They can hook around the environment, and they can even position themselves to fire guns to make sure that the soldiers who are on the beach are safe. Then you have the Joint Air-to-Ground Mission, and this one is with the Army, and they can actually target vehicles and actually attack. The third one is the Phalanx. This is with the Navy. They can zero in on their target. They fire about 75 bullets per second, and they can reload and go again. The difference with these is because these one actually operate for the first time without human contact. So this is why they are so well, I guess this is why they're considered secret mission. And so the reason why these are so distinctive is because they fall into the next category. You can scroll down. The next category is the next slide. So the next category is the lethal. So how the lethal how these stand apart from the autonomous is not only do they not require a human behind the scene as a remote control, but they actually leave the territory of the United States, and they actually go into enemy territory. With the one in the former slide, they are actually here. Here, with the legal, it said legal, it's supposed to be lethal. We're sorry about that. It actually leaves us and it goes into enemy's territory, and it points out the target and it kills. Of course, this poses some problems, which we're going to discuss in a later slide, because as we can see from the news, sometimes you have the drones go into enemy territory and they fire and they kill women and children, and those are not in the military, which is precisely why we have NATO and the Hague Convention, who are at odds with this. But we're going to get to the international response in a second. We can go down to the next slide. Okay, so here's the question. All right, so now that we have the Department of Defense and other countries who are focusing on military robots, we ask ourselves, what is the ethical implication of using these robots? So the first thing is that we have to ensure that when these robots are being designed, that we are thinking of moral competence. So the first trait is that they're supposed to have what we call moral vocabulary. And what does that mean? That means that the words that we are infusing in these robots are supposed to be such that when they speak or use it, it is emphasizing the ethical values of the Western culture. Okay. The second is the system of norms. What does that mean? That means your behavior. So, like a child, we have to teach them what is good behavior, what is bad behavior. And so, when it comes to the moral cognition, the robot is supposed to be able to decipher, okay, how Raquel is behaving is not really ethical. The things that Raquel are saying, that is not really ethical. And so, based on this robot's ability to judge based on the behavior on because of what it has been taught as to this is ethical normal, this is not ethical normal, then that robot is now supposed to be able to make a moral decision based on the behavior as to what is good and what is bad, and then the robot is supposed to be able to communicate to the human about their behavior. Okay. Now, the United States, of course, is focused on designing, constructing, and deploying these military robots. What does that pose? What sort of threat does that pose when you're in a warlike situation? Who is responsible for the robot's action? Is it going to be the robot themselves? Is it going to be the designer? Is it going to be the programmer? Who is going to be responsible when the robot does things that it's not supposed to do? We're going to continue with the next slide. So, one of the big things is that the Department of Defense really give pause to robots having full decision making when it comes to taking human life. Under President Barack Obama, he said that would be fine as long as the individuals who are in charge go under extensive review with the robot. So because of that, the Department of Defense come up with a 5-stage review process to ensure that this robot would be able to kill if it comes to that. The first one is responsibility. So we have to make sure that we are responsible for the information that we are putting inside the robot, such information which is that the robot does not engage in anything discriminatory. And the third is that whoever is working with the robot, the information that the programmer infusing the robot has to be so transparent that whoever comes on board should be able to tell exactly what has taken place so far with the robot. This information has to be reliable, and of course, when it comes to governable, the robot has to be able to be governed by the laws set by the Pentagon. So we are going to continue down with the next slide. What is the international response? International response, most people are not happy with this. Once again, the United States is doing what the United States does, right? But the United States is not the only country that is engaging in this type of warfare. So the United Nations said, okay, most people on the planet do not want robots to be able to kill. Most people on the planet do not want the robots to be able to make decisions if someone should be killed or not. However, what we can do according to the United Nations is, well, how about we just regulate how that happens? So instead of having a blanket law that said, no, you cannot create robots that is going to kill, how about we have a system in place where we regulate exactly how is that going to happen? So the Hague Convention Law of Wars deal with the method of how war actually happened, which weapon is used. So of course, if we are now turning the page where we are going to use robots as combat soldiers, then we now have to redefine the means of warfare. So when it comes to NATO, NATO is like, okay, but how is that really going to work? Because how about when we come into situation with let's say chivalry? If someone is surrendering, how does the robot know this person is actually surrendering, and this robot is supposed to go ahead and put down the weapons? How does the robot know not to kill the woman and not to kill the children? So these are ethical conflicts that has been posed by the international environment. So the problem with having robots making these decisions is, if you think about Kantianism and the whole concept of categorical imperative. Whenever we make a business decision, we have to think about how would we feel, or what would society look like if every single person make the exact same decision that we make. Well, the problem that we're going to face, at least ethical wise, is not all the countries can afford to have killer robots. As I mentioned before, the United States have a $700 billion budget to create this type of warfare. So when we go to war, are we going to unleash these killer robots to countries like, let's say, Panama or Trinidad and Tobago, where they don't have these robots? Or are we going to do it with China or North Korea or Russia or any other countries that may have this? So, if the goal is to eventually not have any humans at all in combat, which is the goal of the Pentagon, when it comes to war, what is going to be the proportional response with robots against human beings? That is clearly an ethical dilemma, and it shows an unfair advantage for those who have against those who don't have. And of course, this is in direct violation of the wars of the Hague Convention. So when it comes to robots being able to decide to kill, what is happening is, because business owners believes that robots are faster and stronger and they're going to outlast us, we are facing the dilemma of, are we in the process of creating our own demise? Because if we are infusing a norm of behavior, and we're getting to the point where the robots will be able to take informed decision as to what is right and what is wrong, what is then going to stop the robot from then deciding that the way humans are behaving is unethical, and what will stop them from turning on us. And so, this is where we have to go back to the basics as to the 3 laws of robotics. This will most likely not end well for the planet, because it is going to get to a point where the robots, as Dr. Arua said, artificial intelligence is alive and well, and it is here, and it is going to get to the point where the robots won't need us anymore to make decisions, because we have done our job so well that they will outlast us. And in the end, we will become the prey. So although this is advantageous right now because of less human casualty, in the end, the fear is that we are all going to be casualties of military robots. So this is the research. Oh, you can go to the next slide. Okay. Robots are not full moral agents because they do not have a conscience. If you do not have a conscience, if you do not have a consciousness, you make your decision based on logic and reasoning. So logically, if you have taught me that this behavior is good, this behavior is bad, then now you cannot inform me that the way in which humans are behaving is bad, and if it is bad, then you ought to be punished. So you can go to the next slide, which is I'm so glad you all have no questions. That is it for our research. Do you have any questions? Oh, this is great. No questions.
I do, but I couldn't get my mute off. Okay, so how do drones fit into the robot world?
How do drones? So drones are what we call lethal autonomous weapon system. They are a type of robot. And so what they have been built to do is they have been built where they no longer need to have someone behind the scene engaging them with a remote control. They have been built where they can examine the environment, and based on the system of norms that they have been taught, assess what is danger and who needs to be taken out. That is the ethical dilemma. And as we can, as we have learned from the past, a lot of individuals, not in our country, have fallen prey to drones making its own decision as to who is the enemy and who is the ally.
And I apologize if you said it in your presentation. I was trying to follow along. Good job, guys. Very, very interesting. It was really good.
Yes, Dr. Anyu, you have a question. You have to unmute yourself. Dr. Anyu. Dr. Anyu, you are on mute, Dr. Anyu. We can't hear your question.
You're muted.
Dr. Anyu,
you have to unmute.
Please unmute Dr. Anyu. Hold on, I'll unmute him.
Okay.
Somebody muted me at the central unit. It's a great presentation, but there are these ethical questions that are in place, but the reality is when you cite regulatory systems like the UN and all those type of things, it stands to reason that 3 or 4 or 5 people who make the decisions for the rest of the world, which is the United States, Great Britain, France, Russia, and probably China is trying to insert itself. Then what happens to two-thirds of the world? They've done it before using the trade systems with the WTO, which is equally controversial and very, very unethical. Drones are presently being used. If you are trying to question the morality of war, this war, morality, and ethics don't go together in the same sentence. In a war situation, you're using a zero-sum game. In other words, there are absolute winners and absolute losers. The essence of war is to destroy, is to extinct, is to eviscerate your enemy. So in that case, why are you going to war? You say, okay, there is some compelling moral reason, which I might use that compelling moral reason using Immanuel Kant's categorical imperative, like you quoted him rightly. And then I say, because my national interest is at stake, I have a moral obligation to my people against other people. And then you extinct them. Then other people will say, nope, you're being immoral, you should not extinct me. So you're going to see this exchange happen all the time. If you want to go to the issue of, okay, morality requires logic and reason, well, drones are based on logic and reason because they are based on mathematical and statistical formulas. Everything that is done there is based on reason. So you are now going back again. It's a very good essay. You've reinvented the great philosophical question of right and wrong. Aristotle, Plato, Kant, Spinoza, every one of them, they brought these arguments again. And again, we keep on revisiting them. With every time there is a transformation, every time you have a change in the global system, which will lead to economic dislocation, imbalances, and everything, you will find them. When we came up with the information revolution, this is what was expected, which is the fourth wave of globalization. We were just in it. We are barely testing it. We can make an argument for its existence, so to speak. Like in hospitals, modern technology, modern ways of carrying out surgeries, they're all based on robotics. But at the same time, if you are looking at it only from the angle of absolute morality, or from the angle of Christianity and all those religious arguments, fine, might make sense. If you look at it from the angle of fairness, which there's nothing like fairness in the world, some people must be, they call themselves superpowers and others call themselves inferior powers. Some call themselves developed and others call themselves developing. Then you will see the various facets of your arguments will fit squarely in the different camps. And the arguments will be pervasive. But at the end of the day, the half little or the half nots become the first casualties of war, and they become the collateral damage, which is what is happening anyway.
So we understand that the notion of outcome-based ethics is said, okay, what is the cost of us making this decision? Mm-hmm. Okay, so if it's the cost, is that, all right, we're gonna have innocent folks being, annihilated. Well, the outcome is that my people are safer. So that's not so much the issue. So the issue is that certain countries are changing the scope of warfare, and so the Hague Convention will now have to go back and rewrite the laws of war. So even though in a war someone win and someone lose, there are still rules that are in place. For example, war is usually not fought among civilian neighborhood. which is why there's all the international outcry when someone drops a bomb on a church or a school or children or a village, right? It is outside the norms of the Hague Convention as well as the United Nations NATO. So the question is, now that we have these military robots that are only among a few nation states, is that enough to change all the international laws in regards to ethics based on these few countries? And truth be told, the superpowers are going to do what the superpowers do anyway. And unfortunately, there would be no, repercussion to bear because they all sit on the Security Council of the United Nations. But
So which goes,
Dr. Anu, you just said that. I mean, the reasons that the have-littles and the have-nots, they suffer the most in the warlike situations. That's why the research like ours, where we talk about ethics and military robotics, is so important. I mean, if people just try to ignore ethics anywhere, I mean, even if, I was doing a research on social robotics and how it's impacting the little kids, like autism, or autistic kids or kids with learning disabilities, and it's creating a huge difference because those kids, they have a fear of talking to humans, but when it comes to robots, they just love the robots. They are just open to robots. So there is a huge importance of whether we talk about military robots or non-military robots or social robots, but anywhere and everywhere, the ethics is very important. I mean, ethics is something, we need the rules and regulations. We need Asimov's robotic laws that Raquel was talking about for making sure that human life is always protected. So those three robot laws, they're actually universal. So, the robot should always listen to the humans. They should always protect human lives, and they should always follow the robots. But if any of the things impact human lives, then they should not do it. I mean, those rules are important. So I think the point that you just said, that have-nots are always the people who suffer. That's why ethics is so important, and that's why we thought that we'll do this research because it has value, it has impact. Sorry,
okay.
you were saying something, Dr. Anu.
Yeah, I'm not in dispute about that, but if I could recommend something to you people, if there's a logical extension of your research, then you have to equally, because it is more slanted towards an advanced world perspective. If you look at it from the perspective of the developing countries,
Right.
then you will equally seem to subscribe to the argument, because I take this position because I've written an essay in 2005 when globalization started, and I termed the essay Globalization an Unbalanced Triangle. Well, paradoxically, no triangle is balanced. So if you look at it just from the topic itself, it will tell you the unfairness with which things are being done. Certain countries will draw the rules. Okay, these rules apply to everybody. The Hague Convention is supposed to apply to everybody. Okay, yeah, the United States has the right to unilaterally go to another country and just blow up somebody's life or blow up a city. In case a city is affected, then we have a diplomatic code for it. We call it collateral damage. If that is the case, France can do it. The Russians did it in Syria, and everybody else in China does it, but India cannot do it, Pakistan cannot do it, Nigeria cannot do it, South Africa cannot do it. This is the dilemma. I am not questioning whether ethics should be used or not. I'm saying it should be, but the question is, at whose expense?
And I think that's great because you can add these things to our managerial implications. I mean, this is like a richer discussion, and this is, of course, a discussion at a higher level. But I think these are some key questions. So thank you, Dr. Anu, for bringing them out. I think we've learned in the research.
Oh, I have another question, Dr. Anshu. In your methodology, you mentioned something about when you were doing the correlations to relationships. Why did you use strong and weak? It doesn't that suggest some biases? If you say strong, my strong might not be your strong.
So So, Dr. Anya, we use the structural equation modeling. So we use the partial least square structural equation modeling, and I never said strong or weak. So when we do the analysis and when we get the path coefficients, that's where we found that the relationship is significant or it's not significant, right? So what I was saying in terms of strong is the relationship was significant, whereas not strong means the relationship was not significant. So they were like a few parameters. For example, I remember in social robotics, agreeableness was not that important parameter, whereas in case of I think it was in the industrial robotics, we found conscientiousness was very important. So we found some of the parameters or some of those dimensions of personality were more stronger or more significant in one kind of robotics over the other robotics using the structural equation modeling.
Okay, now you clarify. Because they use strong and significance interchangeably, and that's what got me a little bit confused.
I meant significant and not significant. Yes.
Okay, last question. You have 7 hypotheses or 8 in this study?
Right.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you tested them all?
Yes, we tested all of them. So we also tested the mediating hypothesis as well as the direct relationships. Everything was tested using the structural equation modeling.
Good. It was carefully done.
Yeah, and we got a good sample from X Culture, and that's the reason we involved X Culture. We have this huge students who are involved, and these are the students who are the citizens of tomorrow. So we just want to know how they looked at the social robots versus the industrial robots.
I think
there are limitations, like we could not get the elderly people involved, and that could have been that could be the next study maybe. So.
I think from the eye of an editor, your essay is going to earn you people a lot of mileage.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Anu. Thank you.
So Dr. Anu,
yes.
Don't forget that we mentioned that our research was based on the ethical value system of the West.
Yeah.
Because you did ask based on whose value is this. So our research is based on the Western value ethics.
Yeah, and that's why I suggested that you follow up with the second part of the essay.
Yes.
By doing the developing countries as well. And then a third part, which will be a comparative analysis, if you want to put it in the form of a book, because the way it is right now, it opens, when every reader reads it, the first question says, but what about the other side?
Yeah. Okay.
So you might suggest that there might be follow-up subsequent models or essays if funds are available for developing countries, and then lastly, you might do a comparative analysis, which would then give your work total and complete comprehensive coverage.
So we'll definitely take your recommendation under consideration. Thank you so very much for that.
Indeed.
All right, so I think we are out of time, but any other question? Maybe we can take one more question for the presenters, if anyone would like to. Okay.
I don't have a question, but very good presentation. But if there's anybody that's interested in going to the ACBSP regional conference, registration is open. It's $25. It's going to be virtual on Friday, November 6th. Get in touch with me ASAP so that I can get in touch with the dean to register us so that we will be counted. So it's the ACBSP regional conference. Usually you have to drive some 5 or 6 hours to a school, but since it's virtual, it's only one day from say 8:30 to 3 o'clock. We have presentations and meetings. So please let me know ASAP, send me an email, and I will get the dean to register us so that we are counted at the conference. Any questions? Also, I sent you all an email with something I got from the UDC Foundation about a Macy's student opportunity for people in management, marketing, and whatever. Just check it out. If you have a student you'd like to recommend, send them my way, and I'll get them in touch with the people who are putting that together. That's all I have.
Okay. All right. So I think there are no more questions. So thank you, Dr. Brown-Gaston, and thank you, Dr. Arora, for a wonderful presentation. I really like that, there were less words and more pictures. So it presentation more interesting. Most of the academic presentations that we see in conferences, it's all words, words, and words. This was a good change. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
All right. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Yeah. Bye-bye.